Hi, and welcome to the Changing Perspectives podcast, the show where we discuss a variety of topics including grief, parenting, relationships, mental health, and pop culture. Join us and explore a number of changing perspectives. We're your hosts, Jenni and Josh Brennan. Hi, Jenni.
Hi.
What's going on?
Nothing. You sound kind of low today.
I sound low?
Yeah, like sad.
Oh, well, I guess that's apropos.
Okay.
I'm not sad. Right before I hit record, I realized I should have cleared my throat again.
I see. Okay.
It's a little froggy.
Okay. Well, I'm froggy too because allergies, and we just spent the entire weekend at sports games for our children. So
Yes. Yelling?
Yes.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
for sure. 3 football games.
Well, 4.
1, 2, 3.
One was not for my child, but because we have to get there early for
yeah, I didn't watch that game.
our younger child, and you're coaching and prepping, I watched the game before.
Yeah.
And cheer.
And
Actually,
then,
I think that team's my favorite team this season right now.
I know.
The one I don't have
They're
children
pretty
on.
good.
Yeah.
When we watched some college football on Saturday
Right.
and watched NFL on Sunday after we got home, so it was all football all the time.
Yes.
But if you're a fan of Changing Perspectives, you know that already because we talk about football on the show. Hi, everybody, and welcome to episode 95.
Whoa.
95 episodes of Changing Perspectives. That's really cool. I'm excited. We're quickly getting to our 100.
I know, we're almost there.
Almost there. Hey, sign up for the newsletter, everybody. ChangingPerspectivesOnline.com. Go check it out over there. Sign up for Jenni's newsletter. You can also check out the awesome merchandise. So Jenni and I were,
Wait, I'm going to jump in because I do have a newsletter coming out. My goal is for a fall newsletter to drop on the first day of fall, which I think is next week. So after this episode drops,
Yes.
sign up right away or pause right now and go to the changingperspectivesonline.com, sign up for the newsletter, and in a few days, you will get the fall newsletter with some links, some updates, and a free lock screen or wallpaper and or both for your phone. Whether you have an iPhone or a Samsung, you can put it on your iPad, but that will be coming to you for free.
Awesome. This episode comes out on the 14th. What are you
Sorry.
making all kinds of loud noises for?
Sorry.
September 14th. That's when you're hearing this. You can also hear this episode somewhere else, Jenni.
On the
that's
Helium
exciting.
Radio Network.
We are now partners of the Helium Radio Network, and we have our own time slot.
Yeah.
So exciting. Thank you for setting this up and finding this. And
No, they found me.
they found you.
Mm-hmm. Us.
Well, you made it work. So
I responded to the email.
Yes.
Yes, I did.
So we are now part of the Helium Radio family. We have a time slot. It was every Monday at 6:30 Eastern. You can hear
AM.
6:30 a.m. Eastern. So for those folks commuting at that time, you can go on to Helium. It's on the website. They have a website, or they have an app which I downloaded. It's very intuitive, actually. I was in my vehicle last time, and I put on the Helium network, and my Toyota whatever console went right to the app, and I could control the app through the vehicle. So that was great.
Okay, nice.
So
this is riveting
Helium-
radio this morning so far.
Hey, this is a big deal for our show.
It is.
My goodness. Jenni's rushing me through it. Helium Radio Network, 6:30 a.m. Eastern on Mondays. You can hear replays of the Changing Perspectives podcast.
Well, I'm rushing you because now we are limited to under an hour
because of that.
because of us, because of that, which is a good thing. And
It's a good thing.
We're 25 minutes in and haven't talked about anything yet.
It's only 4 minutes right now.
Same thing.
So
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, so check us out on Helium Radio, everybody. Also, as most of you know, but just as a reminder, we are brought to you by BetterHelp.com. That's BetterHelp.com. BetterHelp is an online counseling resource who makes professional counseling accessible, affordable, and convenient. They offer 4 ways to get licensed counseling through video sessions, phone call, live chat, and messaging. As everyone knows all too well, the past year and a half has been challenging to say the least, and the broad expertise of the BetterHelp Counselor Network could provide anyone struggling with life's challenges the help they need anytime, anywhere. Whatever struggles you're facing, whether it's depression, grief and loss, anxiety, BetterHelp.com can provide you the counselor that's the right fit. In fact, when you head on over to BetterHelp.com/changing perspectives, you can fill out a survey so they can match you with a mental health professional that will meet your needs. Listen, you may not have access to the help you need where you are. BetterHelp allows you the opportunity to access resources from all over. Visit BetterHelp.com/changing perspectives. After signing up, you'll be matched with a counselor in 24 hours or less. Again, visit BetterHelp.com/changing perspectives. All right. And our BetterHelp live read kind of goes hand in hand with today's episode topic. We're going to dive into a mental health episode today for episode 95, which is a little bit of a, I don't know. I have to be vulnerable in this episode, Jenny.
Oh, is that hard for you?
A little bit. Because we're going to talk about me a little bit. We're going to talk about not only me and my mental health journey, but you didn't even know what I'm going to do.
I don't. I never know what you're going to do.
I pulled a couple articles.
Okay.
We're going to talk about men and mental health.
Yes.
That's what we're going to do.
Did one of your articles include mine?
No.
Guess that's a no. Okay.
No. But that's why you're here.
Okay, all right. Okay.
You can tie
Whatever,
it in.
I won't be offended. Although I did write one for his view from home.
You did?
I did, yeah.
But, I mean, I remember that.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
I'm just teasing you.
We can talk about it. But why do you think right off the bat, Jenny, that this is such an interesting topic? Why are men afraid to explore their own mental health and wellness?
Toxic masculinity.
Yeah. In
America, and I think in a lot of other sort of Western countries and cultures, men are supposed to be like big, rough, tough guys who don't show emotions, and showing emotions is a sign of weakness. So certainly showing signs of depression and saying that you have depression or you have anxiety, or God forbid that you're going to therapy or taking medication, makes you look weak. However, that I think is an old archetype that is starting to really be broken. And especially, I think essentially our generation and the generations after us are really starting to kind of stand up and be brave enough to say, this is something that's happening to a lot of people, including a lot of men, and it's okay to talk about it. And not only is it okay to talk about it, but it's super important to talk about it. And I know we did I think it was a pint-sized episode.
It was.
And it must have been last year around this time.
It was.
Because it was during the football season.
At the beginning of the fall, I believe.
Right, when Dak came out and talked about sort of his experience with depression. Mm-hmm. I can't remember his name.
Dak Prescott.
Yeah, I always confuse him with Dak Shepard. My brain has filed them together.
And we had the same conversation
we did.
during the episode.
Yeah.
Dak Prescott had a great game the other day.
Well, last year he came out and was very open about his own struggles with depression and mental illness following, I think, the suicide of his brother. And there was a lot of response to that. There was a lot of positive response with guys saying, like, thank you for saying that and being open and honest. Me too. But also a lot of people saying, you're a quarterback. You're supposed to be tough. Don't talk about this stuff. Right. You're a baby. Like, boo-hoo that you couldn't get out of bed and go to practice. So was another opportunity to sort of talk about that. So I think my long-winded answer to your question, why is this an important topic, is because it needs to be. And there's a lot of people out there who can't share their voice about it. And I think that's part of why we do what we do, is to sort of shine light on topics that need to be talked about. And
provide a different perspective.
Yes, of course.
So I pulled this article. This is from healthline.com. How can we reduce men's mental health stigma? Mm-hmm. And they share a couple
Sorry,
of...
I'm being really loud in the
You are
background.
being loud today.
Sorry.
That's okay. They share a couple of stats at the beginning. It said in 2017, according to the American Foundation of Suicide Prevention, men died by suicide at a rate of 3.5% higher than women.
Yeah. I don't have the stats in front of me, but there's also, I hate the word completion, but I believe the statistic is that men complete their suicide attempts more than women. But maybe now I'm getting that backwards. I might be getting that backwards. So
okay.
disregard that stat.
Well, this is died by suicide, so completed attempts.
Right. But there's, I will try to look that up as we're talking so I
Okay.
can correct myself. So what was your question?
I said, why do you think that is? Why is it a higher rate?
Well,
for
I think
men?
it goes hand in hand with the stigma, right?
Right.
Like if it's not okay for men to talk about it, and it's not okay for men to
get
help and to take medication and to see a therapist, then that leads to feelings of hopelessness and helplessness and isolation, and that is why people turn to suicide, and also because they have untreated depression, which can place you at higher risk.
Yeah, I mean, all of these stats and pieces of data they share really do go hand in hand. Mental Health America reports 6 million men are affected by depression in the United States every single year. They also list information from the National Institute on Alcohol Abuse and Alcoholism. What just happened?
I was trying to get Everett's attention.
What's he doing?
He was itching.
Are you being loud, Everett?
Yeah, he is. Oh, don't talk to him. He's going to be louder. We have 2 dogs in the studio with us today because one is extra needy.
There we go.
Yeah.
Needy fur babies.
I actually just posted a picture of them on my Instagram story.
The National Institute on Alcohol Abuse and Alcoholism puts the annual number of men dying due to alcohol-related causes at, at 62,000 compared to 26,000 for women.
But that's alcohol related, right?
Right.
Oh,
yes.
so you're tying that to the depression as like a self-medication.
Yes,
Gotcha.
exactly. Men are 2 to 3 times more likely to misuse drugs than women. And depression and suicide are ranked as a leading cause of death among men, and yet they're still far less likely to seek mental health treatment than women. And this article talks about the stigma men face, which is what we've talked about a lot with Dak and Skip from that news story from last year. They still see depression as a sign of weakness. And this article interviewed Dr. Raymond Hobbs, who's a physician consultant at Blue Cross Blue Shield of Michigan. A lot of guys don't want to admit that they have this problem he talks about. Some of the things that this article says, I personally really connected with. He talks about how this type of thinking is outdated. It's a relic of previous generations. And how true is that, Jenny? You talked about previous conversations with patients before who have had a difficult time with their grief journey because of those stigmas from a previous generation, right? Like trying to be tough, you can't cry, all those types of things. And that's still so very prevalent in today's society.
Yeah. Well, I think we still see it a lot, right? If someone says, "Oh, how is so-and-so doing after a loss?" If the answer is, well, they're crying a lot and they're talking about them a lot, it's often said in a negative way, like they're really struggling. They're crying a lot. They cried. He cried at the wake. He cried at the funeral. He was crying the other day. But that's all normal parts of grief. That's all normal grief that's happening there. But we don't give space for that period. And we give even less space for men because of that sort of cultural norm that everyone's supposed to get over their grief and find closure and move on and, take your 3 days off from work and then don't talk about it anymore. Like just get back to living. But we put even more pressure on men to do that in a quicker way.
Right.
I have an article that's sort of circulating a lot. It's sort of picked up a lot of traction, and it's about that. It's about what people who are grieving need from their friends and what their friends don't give them. And I keep seeing it being shared over and over again by people who are grieving, saying, "Yep, this is all true.
Pay attention.
Nobody's talking about my loved one anymore. This is the stuff I need from my friends." And I didn't even think about the gender context within there, right? And I will say, I think most of the people that are sharing it are women.
Interesting.
Yeah, although a funeral home just shared it, so I feel like that's a little more mainstream.
Yep, broadening
it. Yeah, but for sure, grief. if you're having loss after loss after loss and you're not allowed to grieve it, you're not allowed to talk about it, there's this stigma that you're supposed to be strong, and if you're sad, you're weak, and you couple that in with sort of your male toxic masculinity, boy, that's setting the stage for you for depression and anxiety. So this Everett character who's in our office, who's in the studio with us today, might have to be banned from the studio.
I know. What?
He's currently, I'll take a picture.
Please take a picture.
You can look at my
all
story.
Changing Perspectives listeners, please check out Jenni's Instagram, because Everett is being very difficult.
Yeah, that's Changing Perspectives blog at on Insta.
So Dr. Hobbs, in this article, in the Healthline article, says, "We know so much more now, and we recognize the chemical changes that take place. In many ways, mental illness is just like diabetes or any other physical condition." That one quote for me is so important.
Why?
Because I recently started treatment for depression.
And you were really resistant to it.
And we'll get to me at the end. But yes, it's
right when we're running out of time.
Yeah.
I see what you did there.
I know. Okay. I'm tracking the time.
Okay, right.
All you helium listeners, don't worry, you'll get the whole episode. But he points out, the doctor goes to point out that so many people still don't look at it that way. Instead, they see mental health as a lack of personal fortitude or weakness. And it's so frustrating to me.
But I think that there's an overlap even deeper than that, right? That I would venture a guess that men in general access physical care, medical care, less frequently than females.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
That even like going to the doctor for, I don't know, stomach pain or you don't want to appear weak with our sort of toxic masculinity and go to the doctor unless like you're actually dying. So then you've got that sort of as a basis for getting medical attention. And then when you layer on sort of the mental health component, it's sort of like two strikes that are against guys out there.
Yeah. I couldn't agree more. I've been definitely in that camp of avoiding the doctor, the regular physical medical doctor, but obviously very much so. We'll talk about this, but I've avoided seeking out help for my own mental health stuff.
Oh, you just corrected yourself. You were going to say mental illness.
Yeah.
Why did you correct yourself?
Because it's mental health.
Right.
It's not mental illness.
Right.
Yeah.
But it's also okay to say mental illness.
I think so. Yeah.
Like, especially if you're talking about ourselves.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
So I have another article. This is from mentalhealthamerica.org, MHAnational.org. And we'll obviously share all these links in the show notes. But they have this infographic, which I find pretty interesting. They talk about 5 major mental health problems affecting men. One is depression. Over 6 million men suffer from depression per year. Male depression often goes undiagnosed, which is what we're talking about. Men are more likely to report fatigue, irritability, loss of interest in work and hobbies rather than feelings of sadness or worthlessness.
Yes. So often
I couldn't agree more, and I'll talk about that for myself. Yeah, when we run out of time at the end.
Often men's depression presents itself as irritability, short temper, loss of patience, stuff like that. Not the sort of stereotypical sadness and isolation and withdrawal. And I think that that's dangerous too, right? Because it's somewhat okay in that sort of bucket of toxic masculinity for guys to be irritable and grouchy. Yeah. Right?
He's just a grump.
He's just a grump. Yeah. But I would encourage all of you listening to sort of, especially if you're, if you fall into that category of male, that, maybe that sort of grumpiness, that irritability that you're noticing or that people are commenting on, or for those of you who know folks in your life, it's possible that it's actually depression and it's not grumpiness. And I would say it's probably likely, given everything that we've gone through in the past 2 years or so.
Right.
Mental health for everybody is there's a pretty startling need right now that's not being met.
And I want to talk about well, I mean, we can connect it right now. Help is there for you.
Yes.
Help is there for you.
But it's not easy.
It's not easy, but it's easier, I feel like, than it has been in the past. I can speak from experience with that, and we'll talk about why when I get to it.
Okay. Can we maybe start folding some of this in now instead of getting there?
I mean, this is not a shameless plug, but we partner with BetterHelp for a reason, because it's because it's so important to have access to mental health care.
Yes.
And it is easier now than it has been in the past. I know it's maybe not financially easier, but you have more access to virtual assistance than people have.
That's a fair point. I wrote a piece the other day about how one of the hardest parts for me as a therapist right now is that I have to fold time into every single day to turn people away.
Yeah.
And that's really depressing for me.
How many men are you turning away, though? Not
a lot.
Yeah.
But I specialize in things like pregnancy loss.
Mm-hmm.
But men are also involved in that. But like postpartum depression. But men are also involved in that. Anyways, I talked about how, I have to turn people away, and that's how it's been through the pandemic. And other therapists were saying me too, and then folks who were looking for therapists were sharing really heartbreaking stories of like, I've been looking for someone for like 18 months. I've been looking for someone. So it is hard.
It is hard.
And when you couple that with depression, right, it's so hard to decide, okay, I'm going to get help. Okay,
yes.
It's
a huge first step.
It's a huge first step, and it's like a hurdle, right, to sort of to step through or to jump through, because then where do you turn, right? Then you've got to sort of pick somebody who, based on a review or based on a location or based on insurance coverage, feels like they might be safe. And then you have to reach out and put yourself out there and hope they respond and hope they have availability. And if you get kind of shot down, it's really easy for that depression piece to just be like, see, it's never going to happen. It's worthless, or nothing's wrong with you. Let's just move on.
Right.
And the BetterHelp, that is a great option, right? It's not, there's definitely financial stuff that's included now as a barrier, even for folks that are utilizing insurance. A lot of insurances I've seen over the years now have higher copays, and a lot now have deductibles that have to be met, including behavioral health. For a while there were deductibles, but behavioral health was not included in the deductible, and now it is. So I've got lots of folks who, have to pay out of pocket until they meet their deductible. And rough. So it's really rough. But you're right, like options like BetterHelp give you the flexibility of meeting with someone virtually and not having to find someone, right? So you say to the BetterHelp counselor, like the sort of network, the finder, what you're looking for, what your parameters are, and then they do the searching for you, which in many ways is the hardest part.
Yes.
And then if it's not a good fit, like if you start and that clinician's not a good fit, they'll help you find another one.
Yeah.
So I'm glad that you made that connection.
So the next major mental health problem that this article lists is anxiety. Approximately 19.1 million American adults ages 18 to 54 have an anxiety disorder. Over 3 million men have a panic disorder, agoraphobia, or any other phobia. And I have to say, from experience, anxiety was definitely a huge piece of my mental health history, and definitely was part of the reason, one of the major reasons I sought support. They also talk about bipolar disorder. 2.3 million Americans are affected by bipolar disorder. An equal amount of men and women develop the illness. The age of onset for men is between 16 to 25 years old. That I didn't know, actually. I feel like that's fairly young.
Well, what you think about, like, that's a super hard period of life. But there's also a lot of transitions that are happening, and your brain is really kind of sort of entering its final sort of developmental track there. We do see a lot of mental illness, like schizophrenia starts to really show itself.
It's okay. Psychosis and schizophrenia just shows that you're an SME.
Subject matter expert.
Yes.
Okay.
Psychosis
Not
and
Captain
schizophrenia.
Hook's friend. Right, he was
me.
me.
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
Okay.
approximately 3.5 million people in the U.S. are diagnosed with schizophrenia, and it is one of the leading causes of disability. 90% of people who are diagnosed with schizophrenia by age 30 are men.
Mm-hmm.
That's something I did not know.
And the usually their first sort of episodes and diagnostic kind of criteria start to be met between, I think, 18 to 22.
Wow. Finally, the fifth mental health problem is eating disorders. I didn't have an eating disorder, but food is definitely part of my mental health.
I think
issues.
A lot of people have disordered eating.
Yeah, that's
right.
interesting.
So I think we always think of eating disorders as anorexia and bulimia,
Mm-hmm.
But you can have disordered eating in a variety of ways, right? You're basically using food as a self coping strategy, right? Like as an escape or as a self-medication, just like you might be abusing alcohol or misusing drugs. You can do the same thing with food.
It says males account for an estimated 10% of patients with anorexia or bulimia, and an estimated 35% of those with binge eating disorder. Men with eating disorders are less likely to seek professional help than women, which is a common theme that we're seeing across the board here. It talks about how male suicides have been on the rise since 2000, which we already talked about. Gender disparity. So more than 4 times as many men as women die by suicide in the U.S., which we had already talked about as well. So kind of a lot of repeat facts here, but this is really a great little infographic, and we'll share the link to this as well. Actually, this has another link connecting famous athletes with mental illness, kind of connecting the Dak Prescott thing.
What are some of the other athletes?
Terry Bradshaw, which I did not know.
The guy from Brooklyn Nine-Nine.
No.
Nope.
I don't know what you even are talking about.
What is his name?
What are you talking about?
He plays Terry.
Oh, that's Terry. Yeah, I forget his last name.
Okay.
Is
he an athlete?
Person. Yeah, I think he did play football. Actually,
yeah. Okay.
This is the famous Steelers quarterback, Terry Bradshaw.
Yeah. Okay. I know who he is now.
He suffered panic attacks, and he was diagnosed with clinical depression in the late 90s. He suffered panic attacks right after games.
Oh, after games?
And that was in the 70s. Can you imagine, like...
Right. The stigma around that then.
Brandon Marshall, who's a football player as well, he announced he had a diagnosis of borderline personality disorder. He actually was treated here in Massachusetts. Larry Sanders, he was an NBA player, diagnosed with anxiety and depression. They list a bunch here. And this is interesting. We don't really have time to explore this, but you and I have talked about this off air. But the low levels of testosterone being connected to depression, stress, and mood swings among men.
I think that there's a whole lot of, this is probably a whole other episode, is sort of the hormones, and how under talked about they are. So I will frequently say to some of my clients that are coming in, or clients that I've had, that suddenly have like a sudden shift, that it's really important to test your hormone levels, because hormones can, male or female, hormones can throw things way out of whack. But
so interesting.
Often our medical community is like, nah, we're not going to test those, and is more likely to throw an antidepressant at you or an anti-anxiety medication. I'm in the camp that we should figure out what the problem is, where it's coming from. Yeah. And if it's coming from a medical place like low testosterone, or your all of your hormones sort of being unbalanced, let's maybe do something about that.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that we can improve your quality of life. So, but we are seeing a lot of private medical companies start to do that, start to offer testing and prescription hormone treatment, because the mainstream medical community still sort of struggles with that.
Yeah.
But I support that.
So that's a really cool infographic. We'll share that link in the notes as well. But there's one more article that I wanted to share before we sort of dove into me.
Okay.
This was from mentalhealthamerica.org. 3 less known reasons why men don't talk about mental health. And the first one is that they talk about awareness strategies are not targeted well to men. Research was done to develop, quote unquote, the Man Therapy mental health campaign. Indicates that men respond more strongly to humor, especially dark humor, and at least initially to softer mental health language.
So I'm thinking about like advertisements, like commercials, like they're always like, are you experiencing low levels of, I don't know, do you not want to get out of bed? Do you have a hard time connecting with friends? It's always showing a woman, right? Like in a dark room, and she looks really sad. So yeah, not really targeted towards men at all.
It says many awareness campaigns fail to take these considerations into account, leading men to check out as soon as they see mention of mental health
stuff, right?
Exactly. Yeah. They don't focus on the actual symptoms.
Yeah.
This can cause men to feel out of place or vulnerable when discussing these issues. Did I not say I felt vulnerable before?
Yep.
Before this. Number 2, men ask for help differently. Men are much more likely to accept help when there is a chance for reciprocity, which is interesting. That is when they perceive an opportunity to help the other person in return. This wards off the feeling of weakness that is often associated with asking for help. That's interesting.
Makes sense, right? Like, I'm going to be okay-ish with being vulnerable if I can also appear strong by talking about it and helping someone.
Right.
Still sort of caters to that toxic masculinity.
Yeah, absolutely. And finally, it says men can express mental health problems differently, leading to mis- or underdiagnosis. And for sure, that's pretty much what we've been talking about. Although men and women experience similar symptoms of mental health concerns, how they manifest and present those symptoms can vary. It says, for example, according to WebMD, women often respond to symptoms of depression with a more recognizable effect. They
mean affect?
Affect. I apologize. They might appear disheartened, sad, or express that they feel worthless. Although men can demonstrate this as well, men are also more likely to present a more irritable effect, which we've talked about.
Affect.
What is wrong with me?
I don't know. Also, I think a lot of our measurement methods are skewed towards female.
What do you mean?
Like a lot of our screening tools that we use, like standardized screening tools, tend to lean more towards those sort of stereotypical like female traits of depression versus the male stuff.
Really?
Yeah.
So it sounds like Jenny Brennan, LICSW, needs to create some sort of screening.
No. I'm not a doctor. I'm not going back and doing research. Someone else will do that, though. I'll support them. I'm all set with the school.
So we're 32 minutes in. Should we switch gears and talk about me, I guess, a little bit? This is scary, Jenny.
Why? You're okay.
I'm okay.
Well, to get you into that, I will do a buffer to get you can catch your breath and sort of start thinking.
Okay.
I will read you some of the questions on the PHQ-9, which is a standard depression screening tool, which I don't know, maybe you even took it. So the patient's supposed to answer these questions based on how they felt overall over the past 2 weeks with a Likert scale of not at all, several days, more than half of the days, or nearly every day. So how many days did you experience this? Little interest or pleasure in doing things, feeling down, depressed, or hopeless, trouble falling or sleeping or staying asleep or sleeping too much, feeling tired or having little energy, poor appetite or overeating, feeling bad about yourself or that you are a failure or have let yourself or your family down, trouble concentrating on things such as reading the newspaper or watching television, moving or speaking so slowly that other people could have noticed, or so fidgety or restless that you've been moving a lot more than usual, and thoughts that you would be better off dead, or thoughts of hurting yourself in some way. Nothing in there about irritability or short-tempered or, people feeling like you are grumpy or that you've experienced, personality changes or anything like that. Like none of that is in there. I'm thinking probably a lot of men would take that and be like, yeah, no, I'm not.
Right.
They're asking if I'm depressed. I'm not depressed. Totally cool.
I definitely have been asked those questions, though.
Yeah. By who? In therapy?
My therapist.
Yeah, not at like your standard, like physical appointment. Okay.
No. So part of the reason that we were doing this episode is because that over the past year, I've had a lot of focus on my mental health.
Right.
And for years, and this is going to sound weird because I'm married to a psychotherapist.
Yeah.
And I'm married to somebody who herself has had depression for forever.
I remember being 7.
Right.
Yeah.
And it turns out that I too probably have been dealing with some sort of mental health problem since childhood.
Mm-hmm.
Stress and anxiety, huge for me. I get sort of hyper-focused and anxious about things really easily.
Yeah.
And that turns into stress and something that, if I'm stressed out about something, it's the only thing I think about.
Right.
And then really the other thing, so it's stress and anxiety, but then the other big thing was anger. I was angry at the world.
Right.
And the anger part really didn't start until I was older, for myself.
I just want to acknowledge that this is really hard for you.
Yeah,
like you're fidgeting in your seat. Your face is flushed right now. Your eyes are a little glassy.
Mm-hmm.
I know this is hard for you.
No, it is
to be vulnerable.
But it's important.
Thank you. It is important. I think it is really important for people like you who have a voice, especially who are men, to speak up and say, this was my experience and this is what helped.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe this is what didn't help. So what finally got you to get help?
I think I tied these issues into other areas that were struggling for me. Right? I connected them.
Like in a way that explained it away?
Mm-hmm. No. Yeah. So, but I said, how do I fix these other things?
Gotcha.
One of the solutions is to seek assistance or support for the stress, anxiety, depression, and anger. So irritable, just angry at the world.
Yeah.
Which resulted in, undesirable interactions with you and the boys.
Right.
Just not being the husband and dad that I knew that I could be and that I wanted to be.
Well, that you used to be.
That I used to be.
Right.
Also, my physical health.
Right.
Talking. I want to go back to what I said from the infographic about eating disorder. I didn't have an eating disorder, but I ate for comfort.
Right.
To self-medicate, self-soothe, or whatever. And I've been doing that since I was born, I think. We talked about, I was always struggling with weight and all that, since I was in elementary school, pretty much. So for me, I was like, well, I want to be healthier physically and make better choices with food and exercise and that kind of thing. But I think they're connected to these other things, these mental health issues. So I was just something happened. The straw, I don't know what it was exactly, but I connected those things and said, something has to be done. I have to start feeling better, and sought help through, I ended up finding a therapist through our medical insurance. Or did I?
I don't think that's true.
I didn't actually. I think you used Psychology Today. I did use Psychology Today.
Yeah.
I absolutely did.
I don't think I participated.
No, you didn't at all.
I didn't. I don't think. Nope. I don't think I wanted to influence that at all. Yeah, because it was interesting that you ended up picking a social worker. You ended up picking a therapist who it sounds like is pretty similar to me in terms of approach.
On purpose.
Oh, that's interesting.
For me, it was on purpose.
Because you knew what that would be like a little bit?
I think so.
I think it's interesting or important to note for some folks that you've been to therapy before.
Yes.
We'd been to couples counseling.
Yes.
Many years ago, and then kind of off and on, as most couples should do at some point. Actually. Yeah, we've talked about. We've talked about that.
And it's very successful for the most part. Overwhelmingly good experiences.
And you had gone then to her by yourself a few times to process work trauma, stuff like that.
But it was, I've only ever had one experience with my own therapist.
Oh, that's right. I forgot about that.
And I did not like it.
Right.
So I wrote down, about my mental health journey. So those are the reasons. My symptoms were stress, anxiety, and irritability and anger.
I think fatigue too.
Yeah. Oh, for sure.
Right?
And
which could come from the physical piece, but
when I was asked those questions that you had just talked about, a lot of them were yes for me.
Yeah.
But it was so scary to do this. It was so scary.
Well, and that's why I wanted to highlight that you'd been to therapy before. So you'd been to couples counseling. You'd seen that counselor by yourself. And that's right. You did see a therapist, I think maybe for a few sessions many, many years ago.
Yeah.
And you're married to someone who is a therapist. So you know what the therapeutic process kind of looks like, just sort of by proxy. And you talk very openly about mental health, and it was still really, really hard for you. So imagine someone who's never done therapy, never seen a couples counselor, never talked openly about mental health, has no idea what happens in therapy, and who is like super sort of, maybe because of experience, sort of bought into that, machismo, toxic masculinity mindset. Imagine how hard it is for them. Like it was super hard for you.
Right. So my quote unquote bad experiences definitely have influenced my hesitation for sure. Not only did I have a bad experience with individual therapy, but I also had a bad experience with medication.
Right.
I did try antidepressants years ago. And I did not like how it made me feel. It had some side effects that were undesirable.
Well, and that experience was you talked to your doctor about it. Right?
Yeah.
Talk to your doctor. You did. You talked to your primary, and it was so long ago that the primary said, "Oh, this rep just came in and left samples of this for me.
Yeah.
Here are some samples for you to try," and literally threw you packets of samples. And
that compared. So I'm on antidepressants now. I have a psychiatrist that I see in addition to my therapist. And the process that my psychiatrist put me on was so strategic and controlled, and that compared to my PCP throwing samples at me.
Literally, yeah.
It was night and day. It was crazy.
Which is why I always recommend to folks who are starting to think about medication is to find a prescriber. So a psychiatrist or a psychiatric nurse practitioner. So someone who specializes in medication for mental health, not someone who's a practitioner and knows, a lot about a lot of things, but someone who knows sort of everything about this one particular area. Harder to get in, but you're going to see them more often. Typically you go for your first appointment. It's like an hour, hour and a half. And then you come back like every 4 to 6 weeks in the beginning for like a 15-minute check-in. But they're going to be able to monitor for side effects so that if you have an experience where the medication doesn't agree with you or the side effects just don't work, they're going to be there to sort of help you problem solve that. And a lot of them are great and will be there over like email or phone in between to say like, oh, well, maybe that side effect would be better if you took it at night instead of in the morning. So I always recommend that to people. But what that means is you're finding two people. You have to find a therapist because that person's going to be like a clinical psychologist, a licensed mental health counselor, maybe a psychologist. And most of them do not have prescribing. They don't have a license to prescribe. They have a license to practice therapy. So you kind of need a two-pronged approach there. And that's hard.
And not everybody necessarily will need antidepressants, but...
and not everybody that needs antidepressants or anti-anxiety medication or both needs them forever.
Right. No, exactly. But to go back to that first article with Dr. Hobbs talking about how much we know now about mental health diagnoses and how it's chemical related and how there's things you can do, like it's diabetes. Like you're treating diabetes, you're treating high cholesterol, you're treating hypertension, you're treating anxiety and depression, and it's okay. And let's fast forward a little bit. I feel great. Yeah. I am in a really great place with my mental health. I'm clear. I talked with Jenny all the time, talk with you all the time about how I feel clearer. Like I'm not cloudy. I have so much less irritability and so much less anger. And it's been about almost, I forget when I started therapy. I feel like it's been about a year. Almost a year, like 9 months. I can't remember.
I don't feel like it. I feel like it was this year. So we're recording this in September. I feel like we haven't gone through the holidays.
Early spring.
Yeah. I feel like
okay.
it was,
Yeah,
you know what? If we look at the date that I published that article, it was after that.
Okay.
Because it was during the time I wrote that article that you had decided you were going to try to seek help. And there was probably a 4 to 6 week delay between when you decided and when you started, because like it was hard to get people to like return calls and sync schedules and stuff like that. And I feel like that was in March.
Okay.
I know it was in March because I can post it on my website.
Boy, I feel like it's been forever.
Yeah. But how remarkable is that you've had such drastic change, and we're talking about 6 or 7 months of therapy, and the medication was even after that, I think.
And for me, it's both for sure. Uh-huh. It's hand in hand, but it's not like, it wasn't like a cookie cutter. Oh, this is the starter kit for therapy. Right. It was like, here you go, start your therapy sessions. Here you go, find a psychiatrist and a prescriber, and in 6 short weeks you'll be all set to go. No, I started just with the therapy, and it was a process.
It's hard at first. Mm-hmm. Like it's harder because so many folks that are dealing with depression and anxiety sort of shove it all under the surface and don't have permission to talk about it a lot. And then therapy, you're basically taking the lid off and being given permission to talk about it all, and then sort of put that lid back on and then move through life for another week until you have therapy again. It's hard. Yeah. It sort of makes things for a lot of people kind of, I don't want to say worse, but more raw in the beginning.
No, for sure. But I realized that, not shortly after, but a few weeks or a few sessions into meeting with my therapist, that I needed to explore also being on medication. And the result, 9 months later or however long it's been, is really positive for me. But it's not an end all be all. It's not a fix for me, anyway. Everybody's different, but there's certain things that happen, that go through life experiences that, I go through them, and I'm super thankful that I have like a therapy session coming up.
Right.
And I can strategize on how to deal with whatever that situation is. And, we talk about it, the experience happens, and then the next session I can talk to my therapist about how successful I was in dealing with that. But for me, being on antidepressants really does, like the clarity I have, I think is mostly due to that. Being able to sort of clear my mind enough to positively deal with, to have the therapy be more effective. I feel like the strategies and different things we talk about in therapy, I've got the bandwidth to be there for, because I think of the antidepressants.
Yeah.
So
I think that's especially true for, I think a lot of people share that same experience, and I know that's been my experience personally, but also a lot of my patients who, are resistant to medication, and there's more resistance typically to anxiety medication because there's so much anxiety, right? So a lot of folks get anxiety about anti-anxiety medication. And then for so many of them, once they do sort of push through that fear and they start it, they say, why wasn't I on this before? It's just like the anxiety is still there, right? The depression's still there, but it's like the volume on it is lower. It's just a sort of like a cloud, like it's there and it kind of moves on. And I don't hyper focus on it. I'm able to like do meditation or mindfulness or deep breathing exercises or correct my faulty thinking and move on. Like my anxiety and my depression are no longer starring roles in my life. And that's like sometimes you need sort of both of that. You need the medication piece to sort of put the damper on stuff for you a little bit to allow you to do the work in therapy.
Yes, that's exactly
and to be able to sort of change your thought patterns and things like that. But it's really scary for folks to ask for medication because our society still looks at it as a weakness. I think
I remember
we're
feeling
doing better
that way, like just making the phone calls to the psychiatrist to see if she was accepting new patients, and like I felt so weird and like it was a bad thing that
like
I was
a failure.
Yeah. But I don't feel that now. But yeah, I will say too, I just have to say this. During the past year, one of my family members outside of our family, not the Changing Perspectives, Jenni,
not our like little nuclear family,
but outside of my family, somebody got a pretty devastating medical diagnosis. That person's doing better and on the mend, but I'm pretty sure that the only way I was able to deal with it was because I was in therapy.
Yeah,
I really believe that. And it was super, super helpful. And my therapist just happened to be kind of familiar with that diagnosis. So, you know, their expertise helped me deal with it. So it was huge. It was like, I don't even know if I'm doing a good job explaining it, but it was like, I'm so thankful that I was in.
Almost like it was meant to be, right?
Yes, absolutely.
I think that happens for a lot of people because life is hard. And I think it only gets harder as we get older, right? As we age, like just our peers start to have medical issues. We start to have medical issues. Older generations start to have medical issues. Then we're parents. And as our kids get older, there's more to worry about, bigger kids, bigger problems. And so stress is increasing as we're aging, and the world has been relatively rough as of late, right? And so if you're out there listening right now and you're identifying with any of this, like any part of this story, like, oh, I'm irritable, or oh yeah, I'm using food, or I am snapping at people, or I am feeling pretty like heavy and cloudy, now's a really good time to get help. Because you're going to be really grateful that you had the help and you have it in place if something really stressful happens. And that is so helpful for so many people. Well, this is why so many of my patients, this is why I don't have openings very often.
Right.
Because a lot of my patients are, doing the work, and then other stuff happens in life, and it's really helpful to have someone who knows you, who knows your family. I mean, I don't know their family, but I know, you know their background stories, you know their patterns, you know what they tend to fall into. It's really helpful to have someone who knows all that stuff when life gets extra hard. Because you don't have to start a new relationship. You can kind of just dive back. And maybe you've sort of moved on from therapy, right? Like you've sort of decreased and you only see like once every 6 months or something. Then when something bad happens or really stressful happens, or your medication sort of changes its effectiveness, then you've got that person to go back to. Because they know you. And so if there's a little part of anyone listening right now that's thinking like, maybe I should, do it. Do it. Like start with BetterHelp, or go to psychologytoday.com, or call your insurance provider. Or you know what's even better? Ask a friend. Because I promise every single one of you out there listening right now, you have friends, you have family, you have people in your life who are seeing therapists, who are on medication and are not talking about it. And if you ask, you will get the support. If you post on Facebook, does anyone know a good psychologist? Does anyone know a good therapist? You will get messages in your inbox about it.
He's eating a book right now. Everett, don't eat the book.
Do you know what? I gotta grab that book because it's actually a recommendation. Hold on.
Go get that book, because I'll say one more thing because we're kind of running out of time. I do want to say, for me personally, if there wasn't a virtual option for therapy, I don't know that I would have started. It was huge for me, and I still see my therapist virtually.
Every other week.
I'm actually too far away from my therapist to see them in person. So I have to see them virtually. So for me, it is super, super helpful. So please take advantage of that. Things like BetterHelp, just like Jenni said. And a lot of non-BetterHelp therapists, obviously, out there are still offering virtual.
Well, and a lot of the therapists that are on BetterHelp also have their own private practice.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
So the book that Everett was eating is this book that a colleague of mine wrote. So Lori Wildenberg wrote Messy Hope. Help your child overcome anxiety, depression, or suicidal ideation. So I got an early release copy of this, but
That's
it is
so
available now on Amazon, and it's wonderful. Do I have a minute to read the
Yes.
back jacket?
And then we have to close things out.
Some experts say that depression and anxiety are the new normal. Suicide is the second leading cause of death in young people. As parents, we cannot accept this. Many young people feel helpless and hopeless. Our kids must be equipped with more than resilience and positivity. They need hope. And then it goes on to talk about how this book and reading some of these tips can help your children overcome depression, anxiety, and suicidal ideation to experience a hope-filled life. And so much of the research shows that the concept of hope is a really great protective factor for everyone, whether we're talking about depression, anxiety, or grief.
Everett, you can't
now he's
eat
eating
Laurie's
a pen.
book.
He's
Oh
eating
my
a pen.
goodness.
Now he wants to write a book.
That's great. I want to read that book. So
I'll have the link
Oh,
in the show
great.
notes for that book.
So Jenny, before we close things out, we do have a new review.
Oh, that's right.
An iTunes review, and as promised, we do read all new reviews sent to us on iTunes. So this is from I Do Part 2. That's the username. The title is Such Great Chemistry and Information. Love listening to Jenny and her husband. They have such great chemistry and banter. They seem like a real couple. I sincerely appreciate the advice and look forward to the next episode. Very, very cool. Thank you so much for I Do Part 2.
I Do Part 2
that great review.
was started by a wonderful woman named Lisa. So definitely, if you're not following her on social media, do that. It's I Do Part 2, the word TWO.
Yeah.
And also idopart2.com talks about sort of the second part of life, right? Like when you're parenting older kids, when you and your spouse are sort of reconnecting, sort of like I do again, or I still do. So I Do Part 2 is also a wonderful resource.
I follow her on Facebook, and I thoroughly enjoy her content.
Yeah, she's great. It's a great page.
Do you have anything else for us? Because we're coming up on the hour here.
No, thank you for being vulnerable and sharing your story. I could see how hard that was for you.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. But I'm an advocate now because it's been so powerful for me. And has allowed me to just enjoy life better.
Well, and I think,
and I will say, and has given me the room to make healthy decisions. I've had pretty successful last 6 months, 5 or 6 months in my weight loss and health, physical health. So that's good.
I also think you've set a really wonderful example for our children.
Yeah.
Right. And friends, because you've been open about it.
Yeah.
But that for raising 2 boys. Right? 2 teenage boys right now, modeling healthy self-care is really, really important. So those of you listening out there right now, also, if you have children, you need to take care of yourself as a way to model for them that's okay. Because if they ever face some of the same issues, wouldn't it be great for them to be able to say like, oh, my dad or my mom also dealt with that and got help and are in a better place now. Yeah.
Well said, Jenny.
Thank you.
All right, well, everybody, that is going to do it for today. Thank you so much for listening. For today's show notes links, you can check out those articles that we talked about and Laurie's book. What's the name of the book again, Jenny?
Messy Hope.
Yeah, good. That's a great
Messy Hope
great
by
title.
Lori Wildenberg.
So as a reminder, everybody, this episode was for education and entertainment purposes only. Should you need additional support, please contact your healthcare provider for information and referrals. Please follow us on Facebook, everybody, at Changing Perspective Podcast, and on Instagram at Changing Perspectives Blog. You can send us an email to info@changingperspectivesonline.com. You can also visit changingperspectivesonline.com. While you're there, don't forget to visit the shop to check out all that Changing Perspectives merchandise. Go ahead and subscribe to the show so you'll never miss an episode, and we will see you next time. Say bye, Jenny.
Bye, Jenny.
The Changing Perspectives podcast is produced, recorded, and edited by Dizzy Studios. Copyright 2021. Please visit Dizzy Studios on Facebook, facebook.com/Dizzy Studios.